2011, a reporter asked Elon Musk about a new competitor, a relatively unknown Chinese company, a battery maker called BYD that was trying to break into electric cars. Musk can't contain himself. He laughs hard. "Have you seen their car?" he says, barely able to stop laughing. And honestly, he had every reason to laugh. Tesla had just revolutionized the industry. The Roadster proved electric cars could be fast, sexy, and desirable. The Model S was about to launch. Tesla was king. Elon was the prophet of the electric revolution. And BYD, they were nobody. A Chinese battery company making cheap knockoffs in a country known for cheap knockoffs. Of course he laughed, but let's fast forward to today. BYD has overtaken Tesla as the world's largest electric vehicle maker. They're even selling batteries to Tesla. They're the #1 car brand, not just in EVs, but in all cars, in multiple countries. Everywhere you look, BYD is winning. The company Elon dismissed as a joke is now his biggest competitor. The battery maker that started in a tiny workshop became the biggest EV company on the planet, and in barely 20 years. So what happened? How did the punchline become the powerhouse? How did the guy everyone laughed at end up on top? The story begins in a small village in rural China. On April 8, 1966, Wang Chuanfu was born in a remote village in China called Wuwei, a place where no running water and no electricity. His family was extremely poor. His father was a carpenter. His mother worked in the fields and as a housemaid. Wang was one of 8 children, but his father raised him with a strong sense of discipline and hard work. When Wang was 16, his father was diagnosed with liver cancer and passed away within the year. The family situation quickly worsened. His older brother left school to work. His sisters married early to reduce the burden, and one of the youngest sisters had to be sent away because the family couldn't afford to care for her. Wang decided the only way forward was education. He committed to staying in school, hoping to find work and support his family in the future. Then, tragedy struck again. 2 years later, his mother collapsed from exhaustion while working in the fields and died before reaching the hospital. Wang received the news during his exams. When he returned home, he realized he lost both his mother and his chance to continue his education, but his older brother stepped in. Despite having his own family, he gave Wang 10 yuan every week so he can continue studying. His brother's wife even sold her jewelry to help support him. Wang excelled in high school and was accepted into Central South University, one of China's most competitive universities. He chose to study chemistry, the subject he was most passionate about. He performed well academically and graduated in 1987. Wang then went on to earn a master's degree in electrochemical engineering, completing it in 3 years. In 1993, a government research institute set up a battery company in Shenzhen. Because of his background in electrochemical research, Wang was appointed general manager. It was his first real exposure to running a business, learning not just how batteries work, but how companies actually operated. 1 year into the job, Wang read an article stating that Japan would stop manufacturing nickel-cadmium batteries because they caused environmental problems. He immediately thought, if Japanese companies pull out, who will fill that gap? Wang wanted it to be him. Even though he was the general manager of the company, the board of directors refused his idea. They didn't want to work with those batteries. At that point in his life, Wang was looking for stability. He had just gotten married and a child was on the way. Suddenly, without warning and while trying to build his family and achieve stability, he left the government company and started his own. It was a huge risk. He had no capital and was only just starting his professional career. Who would invest in his battery company? But Wang's family stepped in again. This time, his cousin lent him 2.5 million yuan, which was about $350,000 back then. Thanks to his cousin, on November 18, 1994, Yadi Electronics was established in a humble workshop in Shenzhen. Yadi was the name of the street where the workshop was located. After a while, they decided to rename the company BYD. Why BYD? So that when people open business directories, BYD would appear first because B comes before Y. It was simple as that. Eventually, the name was shortened to BYD in English. For non-English speakers, it was much easier to say than BYD, and that's the name the world would come to know. The company started with about 20 employees. They crowded into sleeping spaces or worked in shifts to save money on accommodation. Wang worked with his own hands constantly, so much so that he didn't even attend his daughter's birth because of the workload. There, Wang adopted a strategy that would define his entire career. See what's good, copy it better. The company started studying batteries from Japanese companies like Sony and Sanyo. They checked their patents and did reverse engineering. We'll make something similar with small changes so we won't get caught. But there was a big problem. BYD could already make good batteries, but they didn't have the money for fully automated production lines. Wang asked himself, why do other companies use expensive machines? The answer was obvious. In Japan, the cost of producing a battery with automated lines was cheaper than hiring workers to do it manually. But here's the thing, they weren't in Japan, they were in China, where labor was cheap and plentiful. So instead of copying Japan's factories, Wang built semi-mechanized lines, mixing workers and simple machines. He even built some of the machines. This became a core BYD principle. If you can't afford it, build it. With just 1 million yuan, less than half his capital, BYD set up a line that produced 4,000 batteries a day. By 1997, BYD was China's largest nickel-cadmium battery maker, selling over 150 million batteries. And for Wang, this was just the beginning. To go further, BYD needed to go global and start earning in dollars, not just yuan. Wang sent his sales manager Stella Lee to Motorola's headquarters in the US. She wanted to convince Motorola to buy BYD batteries. Stella was a clever saleswoman, like those old door-to-door salespeople. With persistence and cleverness, Motorola agreed to give BYD a chance. Once Motorola came on board, others followed. Philips, Panasonic, even Sony, the very company BYD had once copied. The Asian financial crisis made Chinese manufacturing cheaper, and BYD became the obvious choice. By 1998, BYD opened its first overseas office in the Netherlands. A year later, it opened one in the US, led by Stella Lee herself. At that time, with such a huge expansion, Wang considered listing BYD on the stock market, but he couldn't. Why? Because Sony sued him for stealing their patents. Honestly, he did steal them, but he made them cheaper. The case dragged on in courts with lots of drama and ended in a settlement. Once the problem was solved, BYD was listed on the stock market in 2002. Investors rushed to buy its stocks. By 2003, BYD had become the world's largest manufacturer of rechargeable batteries by volume. Wang felt like he's already completed the battery game. It was time for a new challenge. He didn't find a better market than the automotive one. Wang told his investor friends that he's decided to shift his career into automotive. All the investors got furious and accused him of being insane. They started threatening to pull their investments, but Wang didn't care. In 2003, he acquired a 77% stake in Quinchuan Automotive, a struggling Chinese car maker, for 270 million yuan, roughly $33 million at the time. Soon after, the investors followed through on their threats and pulled their money out. In 2 days, BYD lost close to 350 million US dollars, but Wang still didn't care. He continued. His goal was to use his battery expertise to make electric cars. But before fully committing to electric cars, BYD kept producing a non-electric model called the Flyer, originally made by Quinchuan. Wang rebranded it under the BYD name and even gave it a logo that looked suspiciously similar to BMW, a true fan of copy-paste. Unfortunately, putting a fancy logo on a bad car doesn't make it sell better. The car flopped. Wang made a new model, changed the logo, and settled for just 3 red letters, BYD. The car was released again, expecting success, but it flopped again. In 2005, Wang returned to the strategy that never let him down. What did he do best? Of course, he copied the Japanese. He got a Toyota Corolla, copied it exactly, and produced the BYD F3. The car was so similar to the Corolla that you could install many F3 parts in a Corolla and vice versa. Using the same strategy of cheap labor from the battery days, he managed to make a car similar to the Corolla at half the price. The car was a massive success. About 100,000 cars were sold in 1 year. It became the fastest local car in China to achieve such numbers. BYD continued its success with the F3 releasing the F3R and F6 models. At this time, Wang was secretly working on electric car research. BYD kept growing. In August 2007, it opened the BYD Pengshen complex, not just a factory, but an entire compound. It had a factory, worker hostels, and cafeterias. Workers and their families lived next to their jobs. Wang lived with them in the same place and ate with them in the same cafeterias. You'd literally find Wang sitting at the same table as the workers. In a 2008 interview with CNN, Wang said that his vision was for his company to become the largest car maker in China by 2015 and one of the biggest in the world by 2025. Confident in his vision, Wang Chuanfu even took BYD to the 2008 Detroit Auto Show. During the event, the company started using the Build Your Dreams as a marketing marketing slogan. It wasn't the result of any deep branding strategy. People even joked that not even Wang knew what BYD really stood for. Probably bring your doubts, not build your dreams. The name came first, the meaning came later. BYD showcased the F3 and F6 and more importantly, unveiled its first plug-in hybrid, the F6DM, running on both electricity and petrol. To most journalists, BYD still looked like a battery company pretending to be a car maker. No history, no brand, no credibility, and honestly, the criticism was fair. BYD entered the show when it wasn't ready. The car brochure was so poorly translated that it became the laughingstock of the event. Journalists made fun of the cars, took pictures of doors that didn't close properly, and mocked their designs. Though, despite the jokes, some journalists noted that the company's hybrid option was impressive, and maybe in the future, BYD could make fully electric cars. These words brought hope, but just as BYD was about to celebrate on those words, Tesla released the Roadster in the same year. Tesla flipped everything upside down. The Roadster could travel long distances, reach high speeds, and had excellent quality. People believed that even if BYD had electric cars, it could never compare to Tesla. But the idea of comparison caught investors' attention. They said, wait, we can invest in BYD so they can make electric cars compete with Tesla, and we'll take a share of the market. Not just any investors, this caught the attention of Charlie Munger, who convinced his friend, the legendary investor Warren Buffett, to invest in BYD. Warren Buffett invested $230 million and bought 10% of the company. This made BYD's stock skyrocket and turned Wang into the richest man in China in 2009. The orphan whose brother once gave him 10 yuan was now worth $5.8 billion, and he wasn't even 43 years old yet. The next year, in 2009, BYD returned to the Detroit Auto Show and unveiled its first fully electric car, the E6. The reveal drew attention, but not in the way BYD had hoped. Journalists were again skeptical. The design felt unfinished, and many saw it as a bold idea that arrived before the company was ready. But while pushing hard into electric cars, BYD pulled back investment from its conventional models, and the rest of its lineup began to suffer. This caused BYD's revenue to drop by 8% in 2010, and net profits dropped by 58%. The following year, profits dropped by 88%. Employees started resigning. BYD even laid off many workers. The quality of the cars got worse. This was the hardest period for Wang and BYD, but Wang's next decision would define the path forward. You know what Wang does when he's concerned. Yes, you're right. Copy and paste. Control-C, Control-V. Wang went to a Mercedes dealership and bought an S-Class and drove it straight to the BYD's R&D lab. He gathered his engineers and said, take it apart. His message was clear. BYD would learn from the best and compete with premium brands. Around the same time, Charlie Munger and Warren Buffett visited BYD in person, signaling their continued support. Despite weak sales of traditional cars, BYD sold 61,000 electric vehicles, reaching about 11% market share. And crucially, soon after, the Chinese government announced strong support for the shift from petrol to electric cars. That changed everything. And who was the biggest electric car company in China at the time? It was already BYD, so it benefited the most from the support, backed by a population of 1.4 billion people. In 2016, electric car sales increased by 130%, and BYD controlled approximately 65% of China's electric car market. The company also started making electric buses. Wang felt optimistic about the bright future ahead, but as usual in his life, a crisis had to happen. See, the Chinese government had supported the transition to electric cars by offering financial incentives up to $9,000 per car. This lowered prices for consumers and encouraged many to switch to electric cars. The government also supported factories by giving them land and reducing taxes. When things got easy, many companies thought, wait, why don't we also make electric cars? A battery company made one, why can't we? The problem? These companies didn't make quality electric cars. So by 2017, the government decided to gradually reduce support to make the market rely on innovation, not subsidies. Instead of direct financial support, they focused on funding research and development and set strict performance standards. This heavily affected BYD. Profits decreased by approximately $220 million between 2017 and 2019. Meanwhile, Elon Musk released the Model Y, which broke records and established Tesla as one of the world's biggest car companies. Musk even opened a factory in China, of all places. Then, in 2020, the COVID-19 pandemic hit. Car sales collapsed, factories shut down, and strict lockdowns swept across China. Many companies laid off workers. Wang chose a different path. He knew his workers personally and decided to keep the factories running by changing what they made. Instead of cars, BYD began producing face masks and sanitizers, Wang decided to benefit from the pandemic. We have the factories, we'll just change the product. Within weeks, BYD became the world's largest face mask producer. But while the world focused on survival, BYD never stopped developing cars. And when the lockdowns eased, Wang revealed what the company had been quietly working on all along. After all, even though Wang was a strong CEO, at heart, he was still a chemist first. BYD had been quietly developing a new battery called Blade battery, based on the LFP or lithium iron phosphate technology. It was a major step forward because it was much safer than most other car batteries. In the nail penetration test, where batteries usually catch fire or explode, BYD's Blade battery didn't burn, didn't explode, and didn't even overheat. The design was also unique. It was thin and long like blades, installed in cars like books on a shelf. This made the car body stronger and lighter. Above all, the battery was more long-lasting. It would last for over 1 million kilometers. Even in high temperatures, the battery worked efficiently. And it was environmentally friendly and cheap, requiring no cobalt or expensive metals. What BYD did with this new battery changed the form of the electric car industry worldwide. BYD didn't just improve the battery, they also focused on car design. They brought in experienced designers to create original models. This is where BYD began to break the idea that Chinese cars were just cheap copies. For the first time, there was real innovation, not just copying. At the end of 2020, BYD released the Han, an electric sedan with details and luxuries not found in any other car, not even Tesla. They didn't stop there. They also made SUVs and sports cars to compete with every type of Tesla vehicle. From 2020 to 2023, BYD sales skyrocketed. Sales went from 400,000 cars to 3 million cars, a 700% increase in just 3 years. Elon Musk, who had mocked BYD years earlier, said, BYD has become highly competitive. After the pandemic, Tesla had to rely on BYD batteries in some of its cars because they were safer, stronger, and cheaper. Soon after, BYD decided it was time to expand globally to the US, Europe, and the Middle East. But unfortunately, some markets had tensions with China. BYD only managed to control about 1% of the European electric car market, and Tesla monopolized the US market anyway. Wang started thinking that the dream of global expansion was impossible. Then came Brazil, and with it, one of the most symbolic moments in BYD's global rise. In 2023, Brazilian president offered BYD something symbolic, a massive factory that once belonged to Ford and had been left abandoned. BYD took it, not just as a factory, but as proof. Brazil gave BYD 3 things at once: scale, legitimacy, and a foothold outside Asia. It showed governments, suppliers, and consumers that BYD could manufacture locally, create jobs, and compete globally. Within a short time, BYD became the dominant electric car company in Brazil, controlling a large share of the country's EV market. More importantly, Brazil became BYD's launchpad, a reference point for other countries watching closely. Once Brazil worked, doors opened everywhere. BYD accelerated its expansion, announcing and building factories across multiple continents in Thailand, Indonesia, Hungary, and Mexico, alongside assembly operations in Uzbekistan and partnerships throughout Europe and the Middle East. From these hubs, BYD currently exports vehicles to over 100 countries, supplying markets across Southeast Asia, Latin America, Europe, Australia, and parts of Africa. Notice what's missing from this list. Yes, you're right, the United States. BYD is hit with 100% tariffs, making it nearly impossible to compete on price. Why? Officially, it's about national security and protecting American jobs. But let's be honest, it's about protecting Tesla, and more specifically, protecting Elon Musk. Because if BYD entered the US market with their $25,000 electric sedans and 30,000 SUVs, while Tesla's cheapest model starts at $40,000, Tesla would get destroyed. The same company that Elon left at 2011 would wipe Tesla off the American roads. Today in 2026, BYD is the world's largest seller of electric vehicles, far ahead of Tesla. In 2025 alone, BYD sold around 4.6 million vehicles globally, including more than 2.2 million fully electric cars. It is now the largest EV manufacturer in the world and the #1 overall selling car brand in many countries, including Singapore. The story of BYD is a typical underdog story. It's the story of an orphan who lived a hard life and tried to work at anything. But when he worked on something, he reached its peak. When he worked on batteries, he made the biggest battery company. When he worked on cars, he made the biggest car company. Even when he worked on face masks, he was on top. Wang was open about his strategy. BYD would start by copying what already worked, then improve it, and eventually outperform the original makers. And in doing so, BYD changed how the world sees Chinese companies, not just as fast followers or cheap manufacturers, but as serious competitors, and in some cases, industry leaders. What began in a village now helps power the future of transportation. And the Build Your Dream, it might have started as a cheesy slogan that people mocked, but Wang turned it into reality.